So this week, December 20th through the 25th, Merry Christmas to all, the sun will be in gate 10 and the earth in gate 15.
These are my gates. 10 is my birthday. I'm born on the second line, so 10 and 15 will be fun for me to describe.
Yeah, our very own vessel of love.
Thank you, Moni.
You're welcome, Danny. So here we can see it on our mandala wheel, the sun in gate 10, which is the behavior of self, and it's an identity gate. And the earth in 15 is modesty, also an identity gate, because all the vessel of love gates are all in the identity center.
It's so funny because the behavior of the self, the I Ching coined a term, treading on the tail of a tiger, beware, meaning beware of your behavior in such sensitive places. And sometimes you stepped on the tail of a tiger, by the way. And the other one, modesty, is just such a nice sounding word, except it's all about extremes becoming modest. So really, it's also the gate of extremes. And they're both part of this vessel of love, the love of humanity and the love of self.
How wonderful.
Mm.
So here we have gate 10. So gate 10's got a whole lot going on. So bear with us and we'll get through it together. So as Danny said, it's treading and it's the gate of the behavior of self. And this is the underlying code of behavior, which ensures successful interaction despite circumstances. So it's knowing how to behave, right? Ra used to say that the only reason people behave is because gate 10 exists in the world. Either you have it or you're being conditioned by other people with it. So gate 10 resides in the identity center. And so we're going to look at 3 different channels that it's linking up with. So the first 2 are part of integration channel, which is self-empowerment is the keynote for the integration channel. And the first one, the link up we're looking at is gate 57, which is intuitive insight. And the 5710 make up the channel of perfected form. And then it also links up with gate 20, which is the gate of now. And the 1020 make up the channel of awakening. And then we shift over to our regular individual circuitry, which individual circuitry is about empowerment, slightly different than the integration with the self-empowerment. Just go with it. And it's part of the centering sub-circuit in that channel. So the 34...
The minor circuit inside the larger knowing circuit, that's all.
Thank you. I was like, there's a lot going on, so we got to... take it slow and try to parse it out.
And Moni was right. Go with me on this one. There's differences. We'll get into it.
Yeah, exactly. So gate 34, which is the gate of power, and then the 3410 make up the channel of exploration. So gate 10 is love of oneself, and it's empowering potential to surrender to living authentically as yourself. And as you come to know, accept, and love what makes you unique, it empowers others to love themselves as well. And it's not a commitment to becoming something, it's a commitment to becoming and being yourself.
It's so profound because what are these words we've had over the decades? The person is a poser, right? Or that was the 80s for me. Phony.
And Catcher in the Rye, phony.
All these different things for the person who's a player, right? Who acts out things that aren't quite them. And you'll notice it when you actually, here's the thing, when you recognize that your love of yourself is so profound, then suddenly saying I love you has as much meaning as saying I love me. You know what I'm saying? Or, I mean, saying I love me has as much, if not more meaning than saying I love you to someone else. And that's sort of the other way around. We've seen a lot of the conditioning in our world is like, where's my soulmate so I can love it, them, something.
Or so they can love me.
So they can love me.
As opposed to how can I love another? How can I give my love to another person to foster them and make myself the type of person that another wants to love and invest in and that mutual beneficial.
And it's terribly uniquely individual and integration. And should I tease these two things apart a little bit? This integration from the centering, this empowerment from the self-empowerment, because the self-empowerment of integration, when you have these two upper channels, like awakening is such a powerful place. It's I love my behavior now. And as soon as you're right now loving, you're on a bike and you're loving where you're going, you're doing a thing, you're playing a game, you're whatever it is, and you're right now, you are awake. Everyone knows that childlike state we get into And we love me right now doing the thing. We love our behavior. I can prove to you we love our behavior in that moment because we can't stop doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's self-evident is I guess what I'm looking for. And that's an integrative thing. It self-empowers. So it
Mm-hmm.
is selfish in its way, but selfish is a wrong word. Selfish means that it doesn't like anyone else. It's just obtuse. It's like, I am me now. And the same thing with 57. So it does a lot of work. A very similar thing, 57, is I'm aware right now. I'm just literally so aware. I'm aware that I love me. I know I love me is what 57, and that's why it's a perfecting form. It's constantly knowing it, in a splenic way. And then when you get to the 34, this is pure centering. This is, I'm exploring myself, but as my love of myself, I can't wait for it to empower others.
Mm.
So these two things are going on at the same time with gate 10, and it's really a beautiful cacophony of like little flavors inside of this one gate that does all of this stuff. And it is the unique expression of I love. I love myself, essentially, is where it
Mm-hmm.
really is supposed to start. And
It has to.
it has to. It has no choice
Yeah.
other than the conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a test for people. I would never do this live so much. Like, I certainly wouldn't do it live, and I try to go easy when I'm reading for someone. But since I'm just saying it into the airwaves, try saying to yourself, I love me. God, I love me so much. And then ask yourself, do you believe what you just said? And if you think the answer is no, because suddenly you got this weird feeling, you're not right. So now keep saying it until it's sort of like faking it until you make it
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
rewire yourself. Because trust me, you're not right. You do love you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or something's just getting in the way of it. Like deep down
right.
at the core, like you have to love yourself because it's just the nature of life and being, unless something is in the way.
So try it and say it. And just
Yeah.
if you sit in a moment of discomfort about even looking in a mirror and saying, dude, I love you, man. I love the crap out of you. I'm so great. If that is hard to say,
Mm-hmm.
um, then notice that. And you're starting to decondition at that moment. And it's a beautiful thing. Gate 10 deconditions the world if
Mm-hmm.
we're lucky. So
Yeah, I find I heard someone on YouTube talk about it where you can like in the morning when you wake up and before you go to bed, just saying like, I love me, I love me, I love me. Like say it like 3 times, even if you don't necessarily believe it. Just like if you start saying it, it becomes a normal thing in your world. And you can,
mm,
kind of, I don't know, like incept the idea into
it's
yourself.
a total inception moment. It
Yeah.
totally is. And the thing is, it comes out right in the now. Gate 10 is right now. Gate 10 also has its melancholy. I'm sad about my behavior. I'm sad about the other people's behavior. I can't tell if I like any of this stuff as it
Yeah.
relates to the behavior of my immediate surroundings. But another thing Gate 10 does is it successfully behaves no matter despite the circumstance. It will just successfully angle its way and contort whatever's needed for behavior, and much of which gate 57 wise is for survival.
Mm-hmm.
It's because gate 10 has two integration channels attached to it, but only one individual. That means it's heavily weighted towards what integration is there for, your own personal immediate survival
Mm-hmm.
right now as yourself. So gate 10's doing all of that, all of the stuff all at once, and it's part of the vessel, and it's
Mm-hmm.
there to basically love itself in its extreme nature. And that's gate 15 when we get to it. It's polarity, another perfect polarity. These polarities are amazing.
It is fascinating, and
Uh,
it's interesting that.
these oppositions, sorry, are
Oh yeah.
amazing.
It's interesting too, like this idea of like the integration circuit. It's like an order of operation things is how I'm kind of processing it. Of just like you need to first be aware and love yourself and love your behavior and be able to survive as yourself and love yourself and have that self empowerment before you can begin empowering others. Like you can't empower somebody else if you're not first empowered and loving of yourself. So it's interesting. There's that, that order of operation that just exists
Mm,
as a truth of nature.
yeah, absolutely. And the only last thing is just as a practical thing, because when we're in this week, there's going to be self-discovery. There will be self-discovery when we get to the end of this and we say wrapping it all up and so forth. So in part of that self-discovery, when you're noticing that you're saying this to yourself and if it's super easy, that's great. But if there's any kind of difficulty at first, just recognize whatever meaning you can give to that difficulty. That's not even going to really be there. Oh, I'm overweight. My things aren't big enough. My this isn't that enough. My whatever. All the things we can look at on ourselves, right? That I'm not enough. Well, I'm not this. I'm not. All these things we do to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Your little 5-year-old does not care. It just says, dude, I love me and I don't care.
Yeah.
And then if it's whatever, all these things that seem like symptoms in your life start to melt away. That's just the behavior of it melting away.
Mm-hmm.
Just recognize how powerful that is, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And it's like one of the things I've like learned to tell myself is just like, you might as well love yourself because it's all you got. You
And it's
can't.
where, yeah, it's that original love affair is inside.
Yeah, and like at your core being, like you are who you are, body and soul. It's what you got, and you might as well learn to love it, because you can try to, change some things, and you can improve upon yourself, but you don't want that to go into an unhealthy level where you're actually harming yourself and your body. It's like, this is what you got. You might as well learn to love it. So I feel like that's a big thing of gate 10.
It sure is. Yeah, I can't wait to get to gate 15 and it
Yeah,
rounds us out, man. Yeah.
let's do it. So here we have the Earth in gate 15. This is modesty and the gate of extremes, that balance, right? It's the quality of behavior which expresses the proper balance between extremes. It's an identity gate, part of the collective and the sharing circuitry, and it's part of the understanding subcircuit. Gate 15 links up with gate 5, which is fixed patterns, and the 15-5 make up the channel of fixed rhythm. So the gate 15 is the love of humanity. It's the capacity to accept and find a place in society for the full spectrum of human behavior. It's how we project transpersonal love for humanity's diversity. And it's by understanding and accepting the diverse and opposite tempos part of humanity that we're fully embracing and promoting for all of us what it means to be human.
Because 15 is the love of humanity. This is about the incarnation cross of the vessel of love. The vessel of love empowers the direction for humanity. And would you mind going, just look at the inside the body graph, and you'll see we're on 15. Go back to, can you flip back to 10 real quick, just to watch the movement? Now go on back.
Boop, boop.
Didn't move very far, did it? Right? 10 to 15. These things are right next to each other. They're doing the work of physically allowing the total transcendence of these extremes. What these extremes are supposed to do, and the reason they called it modesty is, and it's funny, modesty was what the I Ching noticed. They didn't notice the extremes part, they noticed the modesty, or shall I say they chose to keynote it. The modesty is about taking extreme stuff and making it modest, because when it finally enters its polarity on the other side and becomes that channel of rhythm, the channel of rhythm is a design of being in the flow. That's a little subtitle under it, the design of being in the flow. And so everything has to be in the flow or it must go. There's no way around it. It can never be out of that. And this is the one channel that's common to all life down to the single cell. So a blade of grass has got the channel rhythm in it, literally working away, along with one design crystal, obviously keeping it conscious to the planet. By the way, this is part of your answer. If you ever wonder if is the planet itself conscious, it is. It truly is. So this pattern making that 5 does, it holds 15 and it says, my love of all things humanity wise, the potential for it, the ability to at least see that I shouldn't hate it, is the wisdom of 15. It's now in a part of the whole power column between the sacral and the identity center. So these are all tantric gates, meaning this is the tantra inside of humanity at this point. And 15's desire to say, this is extreme. Let's try that. Let's go talk to the bum. I need a new opinion. Let's see what the stranger thinks. These are things that 15 does and accepts. So it's a little bit freaky.
Yeah.
And if you're going to love, the thing is, it's part of the vessel of love. The vessel of love loves all these things, and it just pours that out. Even if the person carrying that cross, you can't tell. They're still pouring out this energy, and the 15 energy is to say my behavior loves me while I navigate the extremes of humanity because I love that too. And I'm going to help make it modest. And you know what's going to help make it modest? All the power coming out of gate 10. My behavior is going to help. No, we're not going to do this thing this way. That's not fair. We're going to have to help make this modest. We'll say gate 10's behavior empowered by 15. They both get empowered. I'd also like you to notice they're both generated channels. At least one 10 has two non-generated channels, but it's a generated channel too. So
yeah, because it has the 34 can connect to it.
the vessel is generated business is the point. And what's that keynote of that generation? Sustainment, right? Just constant sustainment. It goes until the motor runs out. So ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no river wide enough, right? That's the extreme nature of the vessel that will go to any length. And I have no doubt that, you know, that song speaks to every vessel when I hear it, you know. So that's 15 in a nutshell. Nice and extreme, and it can do anything. And don't try and pin it down. And if you try and make it do one thing every day, it will not succeed.
Oh yeah.
Over and over. If you're
Yeah.
a vessel, Moni, you can
I
speak
am.
to that.
I am, yeah. And my design Earth is 15.5. And so I find for me, it's like I find my grounding in extreme situations and extreme environments. And I really find it interesting. It's like this quality of behavior, which expresses the proper balance between the extremes. So I feel like I learn how to exist in my body and in the world by going pendulum swing from one end to the other end. And then I find myself somewhere in the middle-y areas, but I'll experience the full extreme. I'll go from one way and I'm like, oh, that got a little weird. And I'll go to the other way and I was like, oh, that got a little weird too. And I end up finding like my proper behavior, my proper grounding, my proper sense of self after I pendulum from one to the other. And so it is that extremes, but it's also finding the balance and that harmony between the extremes.
Yeah, and this opposition is really a design of the 1015, is really a design of like the thing that, you know, that instance where the craziest thing in the whole wide world happened. There's the 15 saying, wow, that was a lot. And really it's just it's gate 10 is so happy it's still alive, you know, like the car accident that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And the gate 15 is taking in the extreme of this moment, and it literally balances these things out. It makes everything come to a center, just like you just said. What you just described is the point of having extreme things be made modest.
Oh, I almost have that image of like was it fulcrum point? Like when you have like a
Yes.
seesaw, it's like you have
Yes.
the extreme up and the extreme down, and then it's like that
Yep.
fulcrum point to like where can it balance to like make
Why
sense?
does it want balance? It needs to get into the flow. The flow, the heartbeats and a flow, that's a rhythm. The channel of rhythm is the extreme stuff. By the way, a heartbeat is probably a severely extreme thing. If we make ourselves the size of a molecule, we're going to be like, there's an electrical storm down here and it's breaking my eardrums. And right, it's a violent thing down there, and it's extreme, but it's part of a rhythm. You know, and it's all that way is the thing. It's all that way, and it's designed to sustain. So I love this. I love this polarity.
Perfect. All right. Moving,
Opposition.
yeah. Moving forward to our incarnation crosses for the week. So first off, we have the right angle cross of the vessel of love. This is Danny. This is our own very own guru.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy birthday. When engaging in enriching and empowering individuating behaviors, they push the world toward love by being fully themselves and loving their difference. Then we move into the juxtaposition cross of behavior. And these are critical opportunists looking to leave the right impression with their own behavior, while quick to organize or challenge that of others. And then finally, we'll move into the left angle cross of prevention. This is people both oppressive and liberating who bring correction by trying to prevent unhealthy behaviors and actions in others and society before they happen.
This left angle cross of prevention, if its love can go so deep that it really does want to help prevent things. And that's why, you know, at times I guess it could be seen as a little bit much. But it doesn't matter, because ultimately even that person will balance the right extremes. You know, you just got to see it for what it is. It's
sense.
about, huh?
I was just going to say it makes sense, like, because there's the love of extremes, and then there's also like, oh, hey, we went too far on that, and maybe we need to prevent this dangerous, damaging end of extremes.
Right, right. And it can do plenty of that. And that's what it's there for. So whatever we're preventing in the world very much is empowered by this. Everything flowing through this cross is empowered by its two individual gates. But big word in here, the whole loving themselves, that push the world towards being fully, this right angle cross truly anchors this whole motion through the juxtaposition into the left angle. It anchors it with their difference. So gate 10, because of its love of self, and it knows it needs to be, for instance, will speak to all the other individual gates, and the one it'll speak to the most, that will recognize it besides the 15 is gate 1. Is gate 1, because gate 1 is the individual expression of our creativity. It's basically after you get done with loving humanity in the extremes of yourself and you being totally unique and loving of your difference, then gate 1 kicks in and says, I'm going to put my difference to work. I'm creative. You know what I mean? And I can't wait to get that creation out into the world. It empowers all of it. So when this behavior of the opportunist shows up, you have to let them be an opportunist. When the prevention shows up, well, they're noticing things. They're noticing things, and you have to work with that person, or they have to work with you, one or the other. Or they come to find out it doesn't matter. It's all born from the vessel of love, and the vessel itself and 10 and 15 empower our direction. I mean, they're literally the motor for this direction that we then go into.
Good stuff.
Mm.
All right, so now
Intense, man. I got to take a breath.
It's extreme.
It's extreme.
So now we have our hexagrams with our I Ching, with the sun in gate 10, which is the behavior of self, and it's heaven over lake. And in the I Ching, it reads hexagram 10, which is treading, right? Treading on the tail of the tiger. And the image reads heaven above, lake below, treading. A noble one differentiates above and below and makes a place for the people's aspiration. The depths of the sky are reflected in the lake as it dances below heaven. An awareness of other dimensions of reality enters inner dialogue, and this becomes aspiration. It's as natural for people to aspire as it is for the lake to reflect. By marking out the difference between above and below, a noble one shows there's a direction to travel and a distance to cross. This means differentiating the ideal you aspire to from your step-by-step progress as you follow it.
Mm. So the behavior of the self aspiring in between the heaven and the lake and knowing its place, because that's what gate 10's thing is. It just always knows to place its behavior in itself in a certain way. Sounds like the I Ching guys did it again.
Yeah, they tend to have a pretty good grip on it.
They got a knack for this thing, right?
So
that's funny.
Next up, we have the earth in gate 15, which is modesty, and it's earth over mountain. And the hexagram reads integrity. And the image reads, in the center of the earth, there is a mountain, integrity. A noble one reduces what is too much and increases what is diminished, weighing things up to even out their distribution. The earth is unassuming and supports all beings. You might never realize that it contains the height and solidity of a mountain at its center. A noble one is inwardly as self-sufficient as a mountain and as firm as bedrock. She has quietly built up the inner resources to sustain an intelligent, centered generosity. She reduces exaggeration and brings things back to a state of equilibrium, weighing up what is needed from moment to moment and always referring back to that inner balance point. It's the fulcrum. It's the fulcrum on the seesaw.
Dude. Yes. It's amazing how good, obviously, in case anyone doesn't know, all of this information comes from the I Ching in the first place, so yeah, can't go wrong.
It's so fun when
we just described it.
Yeah, we're teasing out these ideas and just playing with it to talk about it because this energy exists, this archetype, this base form of absolute truth exists, so that we are touching upon that in the same way to then find the same exact words. I just love it.
Yeah, I love it, dude. We don't even have to say very much. We already described it. Earth over mountain. It's a nice imagery. I'm still trying to make meaning of it, but I do love the fact that there's just one yang line in this. So it's very extreme.
And the base of the mountain is feminine.
A lot of feminine energy here.
Good stuff. All right. So tying it together for our audience, how can they play with this?
Well, be self-reflective, because your behavior you haven't looked at in a long time. I don't know that for a fact, right? I don't know who you are that's watching this, but for God's sakes, I love you to death, and Moni does too. This will be a time to self-reflect. Like, what is my behavior? Can I say this to myself? Does it feel so extreme? Is this a time where I can see, oh my God, I'm constantly riding between extremes, whether I want to or not, and it doesn't matter. Watch how the extremes always get balanced. In fact, chances are part of your life is extreme. Witness how it balances itself this week. Just witness how it keeps teetering back into some form of a balance, just like the noble one was that Moni described a moment ago.
I love that. Yeah, I have a few ideas percolating about this. One of which is like, I love looking at when certain energetics are popping up and then how they coincide with holidays. So it's really fun is like, first, it's like you have like the winter solstice, which is the extremes. It is the darkest it's going to be before we're going to start, going towards, more sunlight and getting, into winter and then, into spring when it really warms up. But I love that idea that the solstice, which is this time of the most extremes, matches up with this energy of the earth being in 15, which is extremes. And then, coinciding with Christmas, right? It's like, what a better way to celebrate that energy and like that love and that spirit of the season. And I was even having this sense of like this love of self and this love of others. And then it was right away, it was like the golden rule: love your neighbor as yourself, right?
As yourself.
Right? The earth is grounding us in this love of humanity and this love of people and understanding that like extreme of expression, and finding that balance point of like, where can we bring them in, right? Like, I love the idea of like the parable of like Jesus with the 100 lambs and like one of the little sheep get lost and he leaves the 99 because they're okay for a minute, and you go find the lost one and he brings them back into the fold, right? You bring the one who is lost and hurting and you bring them back in, so that that love of humanity and that love of the extremes and the expression, and how can we find a basis, like grounding ourselves in like, hey, we all got to share this earth, right? Where can we find the things that we agree on, and loving one another so we can all exist, and loving your neighbor as yourself so you can ground yourself in the love of the neighbor and then shine the love of yourself in that correct behavior. Like, there's something really beautiful and that it lines up so wonderfully with the Christmas season. I just think that's great.
It really does. It lines right up with it. And on a real personal note, notice how at times during this time while these gates are transiting us, that you can get real emotional. And it's a kind of, when when the cup feels full, you'll notice moments of just inspiring upwards to feel so full, because that's what the vessel does. It's one of the things it does. And it gives us always that hope that there's always something better to hopefully be on the horizon. Just don't be afraid if you suddenly feel something so deeply, just start crying about it, because this is so personal. I love me or I don't. I mean, that's enough to bring a tear to anybody. And when they start to see it, they're like, oh my God, this is deep. So let it be deep, and then watch some crazy extreme stuff and laugh at it, will you? Just, it's freaking funny. You'll be like, oh my God, I did that. Yeah, right. Maybe you just did, but it's okay.
Yeah, and like,
It'll balance. Watch, it'll balance. Yeah.
it'll balance. Yeah, exactly. And especially in just like that very real way of like, it is the darkest time of year. We have the least amount of sun, at least, in the northern hemisphere, right? It is that dark time, but like the sun is coming back. We're almost there. We're super close to the sun coming back, and the day is getting longer again. And so knowing that the nature of the 5 and the 15 is the pattern and the extremes. There's the pattern, and then there's the extreme that's going to break it, and then it's within that same pattern, and finding that fulcrum balance point, that equilibrium of how we make it through together.
Absolutely. I think this is good. People will get to see a whole ton this time around, this particular week. Note one thing to notice. I just remembered
There you go.
there is a mystical feature to this. Gate 10 in gate 10, come 1220, the 1221 marks the beginning of the coming of the light for the northern hemisphere. It marks the
Oh yeah.
moment that the light cometh. So just look at it that way and give it its mystical thing. It'll help fill you up. Plenty of mystery inside of gate 10, just like gate 25. So
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. And to our audience or all our viewers, how are you playing with this? How are you experiencing the extremes and the treading and the behavior of the self? Tell us your stories. We love to hear from you. Ask us questions. And yeah, I'm
be
excited
brave.
to be
Be
brave.
brave. You'll be very happy with yourself. Just be brave.
Yeah, go towards the adventure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we'll catch you next week. Thanks.
Till then.